Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, Rosh HaShanna Chaf Hey. We begin at the Mishnah on the bottom of Chaf Daled Amud Beis. Maaseh, there was a story as follows. Sheba'u Shnaim, two Edom showed up, and they claimed something very interesting. They came to Bezdin, V'amru, and they said, look, Ro'inuhu, we noticed the old moon, Shachros, in the morning, right at sunrise. So we saw the last sliver of the old moon, B'mizrach, in the east, at sunrise. And that very same day, V'arvis B'marav, we saw the new moon, the first sliver discernible from that new moon, at sunset, B'marav, at the west, which is close to impossible, Rashi says. You would think it doesn't work. We know there's a 24-hour gap between the old and the new moon. The moon disappears throughout that time. How can they claim they noticed the old one in the morning and that very same evening the new moon? Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Nuri, indeed, Eidei Sheker Haim, impossible. They're speaking falsehood. Doesn't work. There's a 24-hour gap in between the old and the new moon. It's impossible that they would see the old and new moons on that very same day. So that was his opinion. However, when they arrived at Yavne, where the Bezdin was situated, Kiblon Rabban Gamliel, the Av Bezdin, accepted their testimony. He believed what they had to say. The Gemara will explain how that works. V'oid was another story. Bo'u Shnaim, two fellows showed up. V'amru, and they said, Re'inu bizmanoi, we saw the new moon in its right time, which means on day 30. It's called Bismani because the monthly cycle takes around 29 and a half days, as the Gemara will tell us. That's called Bismani. Saw the new moon right on time on day 30. And Rosh Chodesh should be today. This was actually Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, which was Rosh HaShanna. So on the one hand, we saw him today, but so happens that the following night, Leil Iburoi, why is it called Leil Iburoi? Because day 30 is always called Ibur, the Yom HaIbur, because it could potentially be the extension of last month. Ibur is the extension, so day 30 can potentially be used to extend last month. So in any case, day 30, which was established as Rosh Chodesh, that's called Yom Ibur, was today. And tonight, we looked for the moon, we couldn't see him. Even so, Rabbi Gamliel did not cancel what he did. So they came on day 30, we saw the new moon. Rosh Chodesh, Rosh HaShanna today. Come that very night, nobody sees a moon out there, which sounds strange. If it was seen today, why can't it be seen tonight? No. Rabbi Gamliel says, you never know. For some reason we don't see it, okay, but it doesn't mean that we're going to undo what we were makabel today. We accepted the Eidos, we established today as Rosh HaShanna. We leave it as is. Amar Rabbi Doisa ben Hurkinas, Eidei Sheker Haim. How could you believe them? It's clear and evident that they were lying. They saw the moon today, and then the next night we don't see it. Impossible. He drew an analogy. He says, look, how can Edom say, it's an example, I'll say a woman just gave birth, well, the machar, on that very next day, she's expecting again, her womb, her stomach is bloated, it's ben shineo, meaning the fetus is on the way out, ben shinayim, on the way out of the cavity. So in any case, it's impossible. You can't be expecting yesterday and expecting again today. So in similar fashion, you see the moon yesterday and you'll see it the next night. Well, if the new moon was already visible, it has to be visible throughout. Something's wrong. Something doesn't add up here. And therefore, you have to reject their testimony and extend Elul. Postpone Rosh Chodesh to the next day. Amar Rabbi Yeshua, You know what? I hear what you have to say. I tend to agree with you. It sounds pretty unlikely that you would see the moon one day and no longer see it that night. So in any case, there's machlekes between Rabban Gamliel, who kept the Rosh Chodesh, the Rosh HaShanna, intact, as established on day 30, even though that very night the moon was not to be seen. Well, it can happen. For some reason, we don't see it. Therefore, he did not cancel the Rosh Chodesh, whereas Rabbi Yehoshua sided with Rabbi Doisa ben Harkinas, who disagreed. He says we have to reject the Eidos. So now we have a machlekes between Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua, who was a very prominent figure in Klal Yisrael. Adam Chashav, it sounds from the Gemara that he was even greater than Rabban Gamliel, who happened to be the Rosh HaBezdin, but Rabbi Yehoshua was somebody to reckon with. And now Rabban Gamliel was concerned about a rift developing in Klal Yisrael regarding the scheduling, the calendar. A very, very crucial element in Klal Yisrael's lifestyle, the character, the calendar, the Rosh Chodashim, the Rosh HaShanna. According to Rabban Gamliel, Rosh HaShanna was today. According to Rishua, Rosh HaShanna is tomorrow. Shalach le Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel sends a message to Rishua. We can't have this. I decree on you, Shetavei Esli, you should come travel to me, to Yavne, b'malkelcha, holding your staff, your stick, u'moyisecha, with your money, b'yom Kippurim, shechal yes b'cheshboincha, on your Yom Kippur, which is the day after my Yom Kippur, right? Because Rabban Gamliel's Rosh HaShanna was a day before Rabbi Yeshua's Rosh HaShanna. So, I decree, I make a gzera, you have to come traveling to me on your Yom Kippur to show, to demonstrate to all that you're accepting upon yourself the psak of Bezdin. Haloch atzoy Rabbi Kiva meitzer. Rabbi Kiva goes and he meets Rabbi Yeshua, who was in distress. In distress, look. He's forcing me to be Mechalel my Yom Kippur. Amar loy, Rabbi Kiva sought to console him. He says, look, yesh li lilmod. I want to show you, I want to prove to you that it's okay to follow the psak bezdin, even though you think it was an erroneous psak. Why? Shekol ma she'asa Rabban Gamliel asu. I'm going to show you that everything Rabban Gamliel did and his bezdin did is bona fide, is fact, is accepted by Hashem, is valid, even though you think it was a mistake. Shenemar, pasuk says, Elam hayadei Hashem mikra'ei kodesh asher tikru oisam. We learn from there, and the Gemara will explain exactly how we learn it. Bein bizmanon, bein shalei bizmanon. Whether it's properly arranged, or whether the mi'adim were improperly arranged, fact is, ein lei mi'ados ela edel. These are the Yom Tovim that Klal Yisrael accepts. Hashem relies on the psak bezdin. Whatever they do, that has validity. Don't worry about following the psak of Rabban Gamliel. Go over to his schedule, follow his calendar. Baloi, Eitzel Rabbi Doisa ben Harkinas. Rabbi Yeshua further met Rabbi Doisa, who was the one who originally opposed Rabban Gamliel's psak, and Rabbi Doisa sought to alleviate the situation. Once again, he was trying to coax him into accepting Rabban Gamliel's psak, despite his misgivings. Amalai tells him, look, it's after the fact. Rabban Gamliel and his bezdin already decided we have to follow. That's just the way it is. Im boin anu lodin achar beistina shram Gamliel. If one of us will try to challenge and oppose and question the authority of Rabban Gamliel's bezdin, guess what? It's a never-ending proposition. Tzrichin anu lodin. We're going to do the same regarding every bezdin. Achar kol bezdin ubezdin she'amad mimois Moshe v'ad achshav. Sure, Moshe Rabbeinu is bezdin. That's the bezdin of the highest regard. What happens afterwards? The next door and the following door. You mean to say that everybody has the ability to question and challenge the authority, the knowledge, the expertise of every bezdin? You can't do that. So if you're going to challenge Rabban Gamliel, you may as well do away with tradition. Because then you can challenge any Bezdin. You're not meant to do that. How do I know? The fact is, every Bezdin has been appointed by Hashem. It's considered the supreme authority in Klal Yisrael, and you're meant to follow it. Shenema. Vayal Moshe v'Aaron v'nadav avihu v'shivim miziknei Yisrael. We find that Moshe Rabbeinu asked for help, so to speak. Hashem tells him, look, gather together the elders. And Hashem transferred some nevuah to them. He gave them leadership. And we find that Moshe and Aaron and Nadav and Avihu are mentioned by name, but not the 70 elders. They're left anonymous. V'shivim miziknei Yisrael. And the question is, why? Why doesn't the pasuk mention these Zkenim by name? You know why? There was a purpose. There was a point to that. Leave it blank. To show you. To teach you a lesson. Shekol shloisha shloisha. Sheyamdu. Bezn al Yisrael. Throughout the generations. Every time you have a bezn, 3 dayanim sit down. They're appointed as the court. They have the same power. Harihu kebezdinu shel Moshe. They're considered like Moshe Rabbeinu's bezn. So if the Torah would spell out all the names, then you can always say, well, this Dayan today, how does he compare to the Dayanim by Moshe Rabbeinu? I'm not going to accept their authorities. The Torah specifically left it blank. You don't even know who they were at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. Perhaps your Dayan is greater. So you can't really challenge, you can't oppose the Dayanim that have their bezdin today. You want to accept everybody's authority. That's the way Hashem established his Torah, his Messiah. Go ahead and consider your bezdin kebezdinu shel Moshe. Once Rabbi Yehoshua hears that, he was pacified, he was satisfied, and he followed instructions. Nota makloi me'osav b'yadoi. He took his staff, his money, in his hands. V'halach leYavna etzu Rabbi Gamliel, and he traveled over to Yavna to Rabbi Gamliel on that very day. B'yom shechal Yom Kippurim liyos b'cheshbonai. On the day which, according to his, Rabbi Yeshua's reckoning, it was actually Yom Kippur. Rabbi Gamliel saw him coming. He was so impressed. He was so moved. Amad Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel got up and he gave him a kiss on his head. Amalai, he tells him, B'y b'shalom, come in peace. Rebbe v'Talmid. He referred to him as his Rebbe and his Talmud. Why? You taught me something. Rebbe b'chachma. You're my Rebbe. In matters of chachma. Some of Farshim say that Rabbi Yehoshua was actually greater in ways than Rabbi Gamliel. Or perhaps the fact that he taught him a lesson in humility. In either case, Rebbe v'chachma. You're Talmidi. You're also my Talmud. Shekibalta es dvarai. You accepted my words. You followed my psak. Wow. This was really a sacrifice for the sake of Klal Yisrael, for the sake of maintaining our Messiah tradition. So getting back to the beginning of the Mishnah, we had one story and another story. In the first case, the Edom claimed that they noticed the old moon in the morning in the east. And that very same evening, we saw the new moon, b'marav. Rabbi Yehuda claims it's impossible because it takes more than that between the old and the new moon. There's a gap of 24 hours where nothing's visible. The Gemara says when they came to Yavne, Rabbi Gamliel accepted their testimony. How's that? What happened to this 24-hour formula? Answers the Gemara, Tani will enter a brisa. He responded to the Chachamim. Sometimes there are exceptions. And this was handed down to us in our family. This is what I have in tradition. From Abi Ava, our ancestors, some say David HaMelech. In any case, it's a family tradition. So Taisus explains. Firstly, you meant to know. It all depends how long the day is. You have a long summer day, you have more time to work with between morning and evening. That's first of all. Not only that, you meant to know that the moon follows an elliptic orbit. It's not a straight circle. It has a long part, a short part, and it all depends on its position and how far it is from Earth. And that will result in a discrepancy between certain months and others regarding this gap where the moon is invisible between the old and the new. Sometimes you can have the old and the new on the same day. If it's a long day and it happens to be close to Earth, in which case, or maybe further from Earth, it all depends on the situation. Sometimes it takes him a long time to travel. Sometimes it takes short. In which case, it can take less time for it to reappear after it disappeared. So in any case, what they're saying is plausible, and I accept it. Rabbi Yehuda, my time of debate, Rabbi. Where is the source for this concept? This tradition handed down in Rabbi Gamliel's household. Hashem created the moon. Hashem knows the ins and outs of the sun. Its schedule is very predictable. The sun's ins and outs and rising and setting is very clear and predictable. As opposed to the moon, we're not sure exactly where it's coming and going. It's an unpredictable system. It runs elliptical orbit, in which case it's not always running with a set formula. In fact, we have exceptions to our rules, such as in the case of our Mishnah. There's a story of Rabbi Chia himself, who noticed the moon, the old moon, at the tail end of last month. He noticed the moon. What happened was, it was the end of Elul. He wanted Rosh HaShanna to fall out on time, on day 30. Day 30 will be Aleph Tishrei. He happened to notice the old moon, B'tzafra de Esrim B'Tisha, 29 in the morning. He wanted to make sure that that moon is gone by the time nighttime arrives. Because if you see this old moon the following night, that's it. That night and the following day had been committed to the previous month, as we learned earlier. Daf Chafam Beis. You can only make Rosh Chodesh if you know there was no old moon all throughout that Laila V'Yom period. So he saw the moon on 29. Shakal Kola, he grabbed a piece of mud, Pasakbe, tossed it towards the moon. Amar, he said, L'orta be'inan l'kdushay bach. Tonight, tomorrow, I want to be mekadosh the chodesh with you, meaning I want to start a new month. V'at kaimas hoch, and you're still here. He was afraid that this old moon is going to spill over into tonight, in which case he will not be able to establish tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh. Zil ichse, go cover yourself. Amalei Rabbi Rabbi Chia. So Rabbi turned to Rabbi Chia. He says, look, leave town. Zil la'ayin tav. Go to this place ayin tav. Get out of the way. V'kache la'yarcha. And be mekadosh the chodesh tomorrow. Rashi explains. He was concerned that this old moon will be visible all throughout day 29, all the way till tonight. Perhaps not into tonight, but all the way till the end of the day, in which case we have to work with that 24-hour gap between old and new, in which case he'll be prevented from making Kiddush HaChodesh any time throughout tomorrow, which is still within that 24-hour window. So go to Ein Tav, when nobody's around, make Kiddush HaChodesh there. So people in Ein Tav won't realize what's happening over here, and people over here won't realize what's happening there. Do Kiddush HaChodesh. Apparently it was necessary for them to make Kiddush HaChodesh early that year. Rashi says was Rosh HaShanna, which needed to come out on day 30. And this way you'll avoid any opposition. V'shalach li, and send me a signal. V'shalach li simona, David melech Yisrael chai v'kayam. This will be a simon that you mekadosh the chodesh. Tosfos brings that actually Ein Tav was a makom kavua where they used to do Kiddush HaChodesh. And what's the connection between David melech Yisrael chai v'kayam? And in fact, we do say this pasuk during Kiddush Lavana. The Farshim say that the moon is equated to David HaMelech. It goes up, it goes down, it waxes, it wanes. The Malchus of Yisrael, represented by David HaMelech, goes up and down. Now we have our downtime. Sometimes Lasad Lava will be lit up again. So it's like the moon, which goes up and down. In any case, that would be a simon that you mekadosh the chodesh. Tanu Rabban, there was a story, Pam achas neskashru shamayim ba'avim. So look up to the sky, it's full of clouds. V'niris d'mus levana be'esrim b'tisha l'chodesh. And it looked like a moon on the 29th day of the month. Kasvurma amlaymar Rosh Chodesh. So everybody thinks, well, that sliver must be the new moon. And today should be Rosh Chodesh on day 29. Ubikshu Bezdin Lakacha. And Bezdin wanted to establish today's Rosh Chodesh. Amalim Ram Gamliel, no, it's too early. You need a minimum of 29 and a half and change. Kachmeku Blanim Beis Abi'av. I have this tradition now, family. Ein Chidusha Shalavana. You only have a full revolution of that moon if you reach 29 plus. It's no less, it's not less than Me'esrim B'Tishur Yom, 29 days, Umechza and a half a day, 29 and a half days, so 29 and 12 hours. Ushnei Shlishi Shah, 2/3 of an hour, 40 minutes. Vayin Gimel Chalakim, 73 Chalakim. Chalakim is a reference to one part of 1,080 of an hour. So an hour split into 1080. That's called a chelik in the lashon of Chacham and lashon of the halacha. So basically, it's an orbit of 29 days, 12 hours, a half a day, 4 hours, 4 minutes, 3 seconds, and a third second. That's the minimum. You can't make Kiddush HaChodesh earlier. It doesn't work. It's too early. The moon had not yet completed a full revolution. Now, in order to facilitate this, to delay the Rosh Chodesh from happening, Rabbi Gamliel employed a trick. That day, it so happens to be that Mesa Imoshel Ben Zaza. Ben Zaza's mother passed away. V'yespida Rabbi Gamliel Hesped Gadol, and he conducted this great eulogy in her honor, to delay matters, to avoid Kiddush HaChodesh, to make Rosh HaShanna tomorrow instead of today. Not because this woman was actually deserving of this Hesped Gadol by Rabbi Gamliel. Rather, he did it so that everybody knows. And evidently today was not Rosh HaShanna, today was not Rosh Chodesh, because he's not meant to make a hesped on Rosh Chodesh, on Rosh HaShanna, and therefore it's going to bring out the point that the actual Rosh HaShanna was only tomorrow, the next day. Getting back to the Mishnah, where we had another case, where Rabbi Gamliel accepted the Eidim, and Rabbi Yeshua opposed his psak. Rabbi Gamliel responded with Gzeira, you have to come on your Yom Kippur, holding your muktzah to me, to Yavne. Gemara's Mishnah says, Halach Rabbi Akiva umotzai meitzar. Rabbi Akiva goes and notices him meitzar, in distress. Iboilu, the Bnei Yeshiva asked a shaila, what does the Mishnah mean? Who was in distress? Me meitzar. Who was in distress? Rabbi Akiva Meitzar. Was Rabbi Akiva in distress? That was Halach Umatzah Rabbi Akiva Meitzar. Maybe Rabbi Akiva was in distress. He was concerned that perhaps Rabbi Yeshua wouldn't comply and it's going to create a rift in Klal Yisrael. Oy Rabbi Yeshua Meitzar. Or was it Rabbi Yeshua who was Meitzar? He was being forced to be Machal his Yom Kippur. Tashma, the son you learned in a brayso, so Halach Rabbi Akiva Umatzah Rabbi Yeshua Kashu Meitzar. Rabbi Akiva found Rabbi Yeshua in a state of Meitzar. Amalai, Rabbi says to him, Rabbi, Meitzar, what's wrong? Amalai, so he tells him, Akiva, I want you to know. I would rather fall ill 12 months. And not have this Gzera applied to me, to be Machalala, Yamtiv. Amalai. Rabbi Akiva responds, Rabbi, response to Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi, allow me to tell you a very important thing. Sheli Madatani, that you taught me. I want to remind you what you yourself told me. See, sometimes you need chizuk from an outsider. This is something Rabbi Yeshua himself taught. He needed Rabbi Akiva to remind him. Amalai. Rabbi Yeshua responds, Emar, please say. Amalai, Rabbi Akiva responds, Harayu Emar. Don't you remember the pasuk he told us? Atam, atam, atam. Pasuk says 3 times. Ashatikru oisam. In the parsha of Mayadam, it says 3 times Ashatikru oisam. And we darshan Ashatikru oisam, we darshan atem. because it's without a vav, right? It's spelled aleph saf mem. So the drush is atem. You will establish. You're going to call out today's Rosh Chodesh. The Bezdin is in charge 3 times. What's the point of highlighting this 3 times to tell you? It's absolute. Gimel pa'amim. Atem afilu shoyuke. Bezdin has the authority to be mekadesh chodesh, to be mekadesh yomim tovim, even if they're mistaken. If it turns out that they're wrong, it still has validity. The Torah is based on the Psak Bezdin. Whatever it is, it's valid. Atem, the next one is afilu meizidin, even if they're doing it purposely off. Let's say they have some sort of calculation, some sort of reason that they try to advance or postpone the Rosh Chodesh. It works. The third atem is afilu mutan, even though they were misled and fooled by the Edom. Once they accept the Edom, they establish the Rosh Chodesh, it takes hold. You taught us this halacha. You taught us this concept. I understand that you disagree with Rabbi Gamliel. You hold that he's making a mistake. Fact is, he's the Av Bezdin, and the Bezdin went along. This was the Psak. This is the halacha. Okay, Rabbi Shua heard this. He calmed down. B'lashon hazeh amar lo. Rabbi Shua responds to him as follows: Akiva, nichamtani, nichamtani. You've consoled me. I'm going to go along with it. And in fact, as we're going to see, he went all the way to Yavne, and Rabbi Gamliel was impressed with his show of support, with his anava. Before we get to that, we have another piece where Rabbi Shua visited Rabbi Dosa ben Harkinas. Boloi Eitz Rabbi Dosa ben Harkinas. And he too sought to put him in line with Rabbi Gamliel. Tana Rabbanon, he brought the pasuk with the Shivim Skenim. Why don't we find any mentioning of names of all these Kenim? The answer is Shelo Yaimar Adam. Pliny K'moshe v'Aaron? A person should never have the grounds to say, this dying Pliny, he's the Rav of my city. Oh, what does he have to say? K'moshe v'Aaron? Do you think he equates to Moshe v'Aaron? Nowhere near. Pliny, this dying over here, Kenadav Avihu? You think he equates to Nadav Avihu with Tzadikim and Aviyim? Pliny, this Rav that we have, Ke'elda de Meidad? You think he's like Elda de Meidad? I'm not going to listen to my Rav. He doesn't match up. He's nowhere near their Madrig. That's why the Torah leaves out the name of the Shivim Zakenim. You don't know who they are. Maybe your Rav is more chashav than them. And still they had the ability to paskin. Says Rashi, 3 lines on the bottom. A person can never oppose his bezdin and say, like, listen to my bezdin, you think he has the same expertise as Moshe v'Aaron? But now the Torah leaves it out, leaves it blank. Emerle, you can respond to him and say, look, I understand, maybe your Rav is not like Moshe v'Aaron. Maybe he's like the others Kenim. You have no clue who they are. That's the Torah deliberately leaves it out. We know about Moshe v'Aaron, we know about Elda the Meidad. We don't know who the others Kenim were. Perhaps your Rav matches up to them. So bottom line is, follow your bezdin. Continues the Gemara 4 lines from the bottom. V'omer, we have another raya from another pasuk to this concept. This was when Shmuel Hanavi admonished Klal Yisrael. Look how Hashem loves you. Hashem installed such great leaders. He gave you such great nisim. And he goes through a list of leaders. V'omer, V'yomer Shmuel am Hashem asher asas Moshe v'Aaron. He brought about Moshe v'Aaron to lead you. V'omer v'yishlach Hashem es Yerubal v'es Bedan v'es Yiftach v'es Shmuel. We have a list of 6 names. The Gemara explains who they are. Yerubal, it's a Gideon. That is actually a Gideon, another name for him. V'lo menikr shmo Yerubal. Why do we call him that name? Because he opposed, he challenged the Baal, the Avodah Zarah. Who is Bedan? Is that Shimshon? That's Shimshon HaGibor. V'lo menikr shmo Bedan. Why is he called Bedan? The Asim Bedan, he hails from Shevet Dan. Who is Yiftach? K'mashmoi. Exactly, Yiftach. No frills, no nicknames. Now, the pasuk mentioned Moshe, Aaron, and then 4 more: Gideon, Shimshon, Yiftach, and Shmuel. And we actually find in a pasuk, V'omer, we find in a pasuk in Tehillim that the pasuk equates Moshe, Aaron, and Shmuel. So those were considered great leaders on the highest level. Moshe v'Aaron b'Koyanav, Shmuel b'Koresh Shemoy. We see over here that Shmuel is mentioned in the same context of Moshe v'Aaron. Shakal ha'kosav shloisha kali olam, k'shloisha chamuri olam. So here we find that Moshe, Aaron, and Shmuel are pretty much on the same level. And on the other side of the scale, we have the three lesser, so to speak, leaders, Gideon, Shimshon, and Yiftach. And we find that the Psukim put them all together. Moshe, Aaron, Shmuel, Yiftach, Gideon. What does that tell you? Shakal Kosav Shloisha Kali Olam. The Pasuk sort of equated three lesser, so to speak, leaders, Gideon, Shimshon, and Yiftach, Kishloisha Chamuri Olam. Compared it to the three great leaders of highest stature, Moshe, Aaron, and Shmuel. What does this teach you? Why are they all listed together? To tell you a leader is a leader. A leader, installed by Hashem, has the authority, irrelevant of his madrig. To tell you, Yerubal b'Doirei. Yerubal, who's installed as a leader in his Dor, Moshe b'Doirei, has the same power, same authority from Hashem, just as Moshe in his Dor. You have to listen to him and follow him. Likewise, Bidan, which is Shimshon b'Doirei, his generation, Aaron b'Doirei, is equated to Aaron in his generation. Yiftach b'Doirei, Shmuel b'Doirei. Bottom line, this teaches you Shafilu kal shebekal, even somebody who is not really so worthy. Vinis mane parnas al tzibur, who was elected, who was appointed as a leader of the tzibur, he represents the tzibur to Hashem. He gets special heavenly assistance. Hariyu ke'avish barbir, he is regarded like the leader of the highest stature. Furthermore, says the Brayos, to bring out this point, Va'imar, look at the pasuk in Dvar. Ubasalash hakehanim alivim. You come to the Kayam to Levim, to the judge who will be in office by Yamamahim during that time, during your generation. Why does the pasuk have to add that? Could you think one will approach a dayan who lived in a previous generation? That's impossible. The pasuk here is highlighting something. Accept his authority. Go ahead, go. Use his services. Trust him. Follow him. He gets siyata d'shmaya from Hashem. The leader in your generation is like the leader in the past generation. Va'imar, the pasuk further says, is actually a pasuk in Kayelas. Don't start questioning. Don't start comparing. Al Taimar, don't ask. Mahaya, what happened? The previous generations, the previous leaders were so much greater than today's. We used to have Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Feinstein. Today, we have Gedolim. They don't compare. Don't ask that question. Why not? Oh, so Rashi provides the answer. 7 lines from the top. Al Taimar, don't ask. And the pasuk actually concludes with the words that provide the answer. This is not a question coming from Chachma. It's lacking wisdom. Why? Says Rashi. You're complaining about today's leaders. What about today's generation? Leaders represent generation. They're in proportion to the generation. Previous days were greater. That's why they had greater leaders. The madrega of the leaders commensurate to the madrega of the dar. We can't have the later ones compared to the previous ones, meaning it's all tali in the madrega of the dar. But in proportion to the dar, it's the same thing. A greater dar has a greater leader. A dar with lesser stature has a leader with less stature. Bottom line is, follow the dar, follow the dayan, the shofet, the bezin, the manig of each generation. In fact, Rabbi Yehoshua listens and he takes whatever he needed to take. Nato makle ma'oisa biyadai, and he went to Rabbi Gamliel. Tana Rabbanon, kivin shara oisa. As soon as Rabbi Gamliel notices Rabbi Yehoshua approaching with his muktzah items on Yom Kippur, Amad mikisai, he got up from his chair, and his shokal roisha gave him a kiss on his head. Amalei tells him, Shalom Alecha, Rebbe v'Talmidi. Rebbe, Shilmad Tani Torah B'Ravim, you taught me Torah B'Ravim. V'Talmidei, and you're my Talmud. In this context here, you're behaving like a Talmud. Shani Goyzer Lach Gzera, look, I make a Gzera, V'ata Makame, you comply. Talmud, just like a Talmud listens to his Rebbe. Wow, that's really impressive. Ashrei Hador, fortunate is the generation. Shag Doilim, that even the great ones, when necessary, Nishmoy and Mektanim, they comply and they listen to the Ktanim, to the ones that are of a lower stature than them, such as you listening to me. Kal v'chomer, certainly, Ktanim l'gdolim, that the smaller people listen to the greater people. What do you mean? Kal v'chomer. Chiyuvahu. Sounds like it's something praiseworthy. The Ktanim should listen to Gdolim. It's mandatory. A Katan has to listen to a Gadol. It's not just something of praise. It's not just praiseworthy. It's obligatory. What do he mean over here? Ella, what he meant is like this. By your show of example, you're setting a precedent and influencing everybody and causing them to listen to the Chachamim, which is amazing. Since even the Gdolim, such as you, are listening to the Ktanim, such as myself. All the smaller people, people of lower stature, lay people, the community, the general Olam, will apply Kavachayim to themselves and say, look, if Rabbi Yeshua, this great Rabbi Yeshua, listens to Rabbi Gamliel, certainly we have to listen to him. And that's very good for maintaining a tradition, the Messiah and Klal Yisrael. Hadran Lach im Einan Makir. Continues the mission. Ra'u Bezdin v'chol Yisrael. Suppose everybody happened to see the new moon, Bezdin, and everybody around. Nechkru Edom, or in a case where Edom came along, claimed they saw the new moon, and we cross-examined them. But we ran out of time. By the time they got around to concluding and saying Mekudesh and declaring today as Rosh Chodesh, nighttime arrived. Too late. You can't do that at night. Kiddush HaChodesh is like a court case, which can only happen by day. Harezim Uber is considered an extended month, a long month. Rosh Chodesh is the next day, tomorrow. Ra'u Bezdin Bolvat. Suppose you have a whole group of Dayanim sitting, 23 Dayanim, and they all saw the new moon. Nobody else was around, just the Dayanim. How do they go about doing Kiddush HaChodesh? We need to have Edom testifying and Dayanim accepting the testimony. Here we have a whole group of Dayanim. No Edom. Yamdu Shnayim. The two of them should get up, consider themselves to be witnesses, and testify before their colleagues. So we have the Edom testifying and the Dayanim accepting the testimony. And they'll declare Mekudesh. What about Ra'u Shleisha? Suppose we have only 3 Dayanim, that's it. And they're considered the full Bezdin. We have just a 3 Dayan court sitting here. And they notice the new moon. So what do they do now? There's short manpower, not enough to go around to have Edom and Dayanim, just 3 in total. Yamdu Ashnaim, 2 of them should get up, serve as Edom. Yeshivu mechavreim etzel al yachad, and bring over some chaverim, some colleagues who are smuchim, who are mumchim, who have the ability to join the court. And they'll sit down near the third fellow sitting there. They'll join him. Right? So 2 got up, leaving their third colleague behind. They'll bring over some others, fill up the bezdin. Now these 2 Edom will testify before them. Why? She'ena yachid nemon al de'atzmai. A single dayan is not nemon, meaning he doesn't have the authority to establish Rosh Chodesh. You need at least 3 dayan. Mishnah began with a case where Bezdin saw the new moon and also Kol Yisrael. Lamali lemisna ru'u Bezdin v'Chol Yisrael. Mishnah could have just said Bezdin saw. Why do we need Bezdin and Yisrael? I mean, Bezdin saw it. They don't need any help. Istrich, your chiddush is like this. Perhaps I would think, since everybody saw Bezdin, the multitudes, if Allah, it's become public knowledge. It's become publicized. Look, today, day 30 is must be Rosh Chodesh today. Look, there's a new moon up there. And they shouldn't delay, they shouldn't extend a month and establish Rosh Chodesh only tomorrow. Right? What happened was they didn't get to finish the process until tonight. We make it a Chodesh Me'uber. Perhaps, there would be room to think, Look, everybody saw the new moon. The whole point of taking the Adam's testimony and, of course, examining and deliberating is to figure out what happened, to ensure that indeed we have the new moon here. But here, everybody sees it. It's public knowledge. Perhaps we don't need the whole formal process. We shouldn't make Ibur. Rather, we should consider today, day 30, as Rosh Chodesh Kamashmon. The Chodesh is no. Even though everybody sees it, we need to go through that formal process, have Edom, Chakiros, and conclude with Mekudesh, all before the end of the day. In this case, they missed the deadline. Tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh. Continues the Gemara. V'kivan the tunnel. But once we say Ru'u Bezdin B'chol Yisrael, everybody saw it. Nechkeru ha'edim alamali. Why do we have to cross-examine Edom? Everybody saw it. There's nothing to question here. No. The Mishnah meant like this. We're speaking two different cases. In the first case, Bezdin and Kol Yisrael saw. Inami, alternatively, this is another option, another case, where only Edom came along and claimed to have seen the new moon. And then, Nechkru Edom. And we cross-examined them, we questioned their testimony. And we didn't get to conclude the process, to declare Mekudesh until nighttime. So we're speaking about two different cases. In the first, everybody sees it, but they didn't get around to conclusion until tonight. In the second case, only the Edom came along that they saw it. We cross-examined. We didn't get done until nighttime. It's a Chodesh Me'uber. Says the Gemara, V'chiven de tana achach ha'sheicha, harei me'uber. But once we learn that even if everybody saw it, right, in the first case, Bezdin and Kol Yisrael saw, they didn't get to say Mekudesh achach ha'sheicha. It's considered a Chodesh Me'uber. Once we say that, why do you need a second case? Why even discuss the second case? Isn't it included in the first? Look, everybody saw it. It's clear, it's evident. No. We have to go through the process. And you can get around to saying Mekudesh until nightfall. Isn't it evident that in a case where only two Edom come along, claim to see them, to have seen the new moon, and we have to go through the Chakiros, and when we get done with the process until tonight, it's considered a Chodesh Me'uber. Of course. In the first case where everybody saw it, you have to postpone for lack of that public formal declaration during daytime. Of course, if only two Edom come along and claim they saw the new moon, you can't consider Rosh Chodesh until tomorrow. If they didn't conclude the process until tomorrow. So what's the Chiddush? There is a Chiddush here. Why? Perhaps I would think that in the case where Edom come along, and we began the Chakira, we began cross-examining them during daytime. So once we initiate that process during daytime, to have a Chakiras Edom, the cross-examination of the Edom should be considered like the first stage, the initiation of a din. Mekudesh, and that declaration, Mekudesh, Kigmarden, simply like the conclusion of a din, which will allow us to conclude it at night. Why? Why would I say so? We have a precedent. Every dini momentous works like that. Every court case involving monetary matters, you can start by day, but end at night. Dini momentous. Just like any other court case involving dini moment, this not. Dini momentous. Done by yom, you start the din by day. That's the main part of the din. Even if you want to finish at night, that's okay. Issue the psak at night, that's fine. Achanami here as well. Mikacham alayla. Perhaps in the case where you began the chakira of the Edom by day, that would allow us to do the kiddush at night. Kamashmon, Kamaz Mishnah says no. Absolutely not. It's different than Dini Mamres. Over here you have to finish the process during daytime. Who says? Maybe let's compare the two things. Perhaps the Gemara din by Kiddush Chodesh can also take place at night. Amakra, Pasuk says, Ki Choyk L'Yisraelu, Mishpat L'Keyak, referring to Kiddush HaChodesh. We call it Mishpat. Eimas Havi Choyk. What's the Pasuk referring to with the word Choyk? The Gemara din. That's a conclusion, a declaration, establishment of Rosh Chodesh. V'kakari le'rachmana mishpat. The Torah refers to it as mishpat. Ma mishpat b'yoyim, this as mishpat, is meant to be during daytime. Rashi brings a pasuk. Avachanami b'yoyim, likewise over here. That conclusion of the Kiddush HaChodesh, that establishment of Rosh Chodesh has to take place during daytime. And it's different than Dini Mamonis. Perhaps the difference is because by Dini Mamonis, the point is just to verify what happened. Reuben claims that Shimon owes him $1 million. Shimon denies. Back and forth, there's Edom, whole discussion, declaration. As long as you initiate the proceedings during daytime, conclusion could happen at night, because the point is just to verify the claims that were claimed and put forth during daytime. He's just trying to be mevarer the mitzias, right? Trying to clarify what actually happened. So Tchilas Mishpat is considered crucial, and if that happens by day, that's enough. But by Kiddush HaChodesh, we just learned the Gemara. It's not always dependent on the actual facts. The practical considerations are definitely something to be reckoned with. But at the end of the day, so to speak, the Bezin and their authority is what carries the day. They determine the Kedushas HaChodesh. They have the ability to be Mekadosh, even b'shoigig, b'mezid, right? It's not just a question of verifying facts, verifying the Metzias. Was there a moon? Was there no moon? It's the Kiddush HaChodesh which is given in the hands of Bezin that's being implemented at that point of Gemar, at that point of declaring Mekudesh. That's the crucial point. That's the pivotal point. This is where it takes hold. This is where it gets applied and activated. So the Gemar is the primary element and stage when it comes to Kiddush HaChodesh, and that is to take place by day. Continues the Gemara. Ra'u Bezdin. So let's say the whole Bezdin is sitting and they notice the new moon. They can't just proceed and say Mekudesh. It needs to be Haggadas Edus. Yam Dushnayim, V'yidu B'fneim. Two people get up and are made in front of the rest. And they accept their Edus and conclude accordingly. V'amai, why do the Edom have to get up? Why can't the Dayanim on their own just proceed to conclusion? Look, we saw the new moon, Mekudesh. Loite Shmiya Gedola Maria. How could listening to Edom be better than personally witnessing the new moon? What happened was, they were sitting at night and they noticed that new moon. Nighttime is not a appropriate time to do a din, as we learned. So if they're going to use the fact that they personally saw the moon to conclude accordingly, to paskin accordingly, they're basically presenting themselves as dayanim. Right? We saw it as judges, and we're going to conclude accordingly. Well, if you saw it at night, you can't view yourself as a judge, because you can't judge at night. So they don't have the power of re'iyah, personally experiencing it as a dayan, because at night is not a time to do dayanas, judging. Rather, they can serve as Edom. Right? That's okay. You can see something at night and then pass that over to Bezdin. So these Dayanim who happen to see the new moon at night have to wait until morning and then treat themselves as Edom, because that's when they saw it. They saw it in the time when they couldn't serve as Dayanim. Right? Nighttime is not a time of Mishpat. So they have to treat themselves as Edom. Next morning they get up and they testify. Look, we saw the new moon, and the other Dayanim will accept their testimony and act accordingly. Let's say there were only 3 Dayanim there, and they noticed the new moon. Once again, Yam Dushnayim, 2 of them should get up, and bring some other colleagues, other Dayanim, sit them down next to this third Dayan, and these 2 Dayanim will testify before them. Amai, why? Why is this needed? Hachanami, here as well, we could say the same thing. Nema, we should say, Loite Shmiya. How could listening to Edom be better, Gedola Maria, than witnessing it firsthand? They all saw it. Why do we need Haggadas Edus? Perhaps you say, Hachanami, here as well. Initially, when they saw it, it was night, in which case they can't act based on what they saw in the context of a judge, because they saw it at night. They can't serve in the capacity of a judge at night. Rather, they can serve as Edom. That's why we need this process of Edom with Dayan. Well, Hainahach, that's an exact repetition of the first case. What's the chiddush? Answers the Gemara. Seifa, it's trichle. This last case contains an added chiddush. We learn from here that a dayan on his own can't carry this load, this responsibility. We need at least 3 dayanim to execute Kiddush HaChodesh. And that's what we learn from the Seifa. We had 3 people, 3 dayanim, who saw the new moon. 2 have to get up, provide testimony, but this last individual can't just shoulder it on his own. We have to join him up with other people. Another 2 dayanim for a total of 3. Why would I think that even a yachid is okay? The salka that perhaps I would say. We learned that dini mamanis b'shloisha. A monetary court case needs 3 dayanim. That's typically. But if he was a public expert, he was a known fellow, a man of stature, even if he's on his own, he can do that dini mamanis. So I would think perhaps here as well, as well, a yachid mumcha can go ahead and make Kiddush HaChodesh. Kamashmon, a Kiddush is no. We need 3. Ve'machinami, perhaps even 1 is enough. The answer is no. Ein lecha mumcha l'rabim b'Yisrael. Yoisim Moshe Rabbeinu. Who is the greatest expert in Yisrael? Moshe Rabbeinu. V'ka'amol HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Hashem tells him, you're not enough. Adi ika iron badach. You need iron with you. Ychsev vayom Hashem al Moshe val iron. Be'eretz Mitzrayim. Leimar. HaChodesh hazeh lachem. So you see, you need Moshe, Aaron, and as Tosfos points out, a bezin always needs an odd number, a minimum of 3. Now, in our Mishnah, we learned that even a dayan who personally observed the new moon can go ahead and function as a dayan in that capacity, even though you have personal experience and you're not really an objective participant anymore, because you saw it yourself. Does that work? Can you serve as a judge if you witness the story yourself? L'mrei medimi, to say the aid nasa dayan, that's somebody who can serve in an aid capacity, which basically means he saw the incident himself, such as his dayanim who actually saw the new moon. Nasa dayan, they can go ahead and serve as a dayan, as a judge in that very same case. Lema masnisin like Rabbi Kiva. Apparently, we're not following Rabbi Kiva, who doesn't allow that to happen. If you have personal experience, you're puzzled from serving as a dayan in that case. You're no longer an objective participant. The Sanya, Sanhedrin shero echad sheharag sanefesh. Suppose the Sanhedrin noticed Reuben killing Shimon. Miktsasa nasu edim. Some of them could serve as edim. Miktsasa nasu dayanim. The other ones can accept the edis. They can serve in a dayan capacity, no problem, even though everybody saw the story. Did Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Kiva ever? No. He says no. Kula nasun edim. All of them can potentially be edim. They all saw the story. That's it. They're disqualified from being dayanim. They're no longer objective players. Vein aid nasa dayan. One who can be an aid, meaning he saw the story, can't become a dayan. So why do you allow it by Kiddush HaChodesh? The fellow who saw the new moon, the dayan that noticed, he'll serve as a judge in Kiddush HaChodesh? I feel it Rabbi Kiva. No. Even Rabbi Kiva would agree in our case that it's okay. Rabbi Kiva Hasam. It's only over there that Rabbi Kiva disqualifies. Oh, b'dinin nefashos. Speaking about dinin nefashos, matters pertaining to capital punishment. The Rachmana Amma, the pasuk says, you have to seek to acquit this person, to find the schos, v'shaftu eid, v'yitzilu eid. You have to try to save him. The Kiva and the Chazyu, once Bezdin saw the Katal Nafsh that he killed somebody, there's no way they're gonna have a very hard time being a finding some mitigating factors in this case. Well, it was b'shoygeg or whatever. Once you see it firsthand, you're already committed. So therefore, he can't serve as a judge. But when it comes to Kiddush HaChodesh, I feel that Rabbi Kiva might. Even Rabbi Kiva agrees. There's no reason to disqualify the aid. There's no agenda. We're not trying to save anything. So what if they saw the new moon? They can still serve in a judge capacity. So when it comes to Didei Nefashos, once you have personal experience, it's very hard for you to be a matzel to try to save this person. But by Didei Kiddush HaChodesh, it's not an issue. So what did we learn today? We had this story with Rabbi Gamliel, who instructed Rabbi Yeshua to come to him on Yom Kippur. The Gemara says from the word atem, We learn afilu mezidin, afilu shoyigin. A Bezdin has the authority to establish the Rosh Chodesh in any case. We learned that every year a Bezdin has the same authority as the Bezdin at the time Moshe Rabbeinu, and Yiftach b'doiroi, Kishmo b'doiroi. Every leader has to be treated with respect, just as the leaders in the days of old. Bezdin has to start and end the procedure during daytime. If the Bezdin saw it at night, then they can't serve as a dain, rather only as edim. We learned that a yachid can't be mekadosh the chodesh, and even Bezdin who actually saw the new moon can go ahead and serve in a dayan, in a judge capacity in this case. All the best to you and much tzlacha.